Our next speaker is Mark Lurie, and while he's getting prepared here, I've got just a couple things for you. First of all, this is just a repeat from earlier today. Josh and Rich are going to be doing a special dinner presentation today. If you'd like to apply, there is a card inside your bag. They request that you submit some information about yourself, but again, look inside that card or head on over. The link to check out is blockchainedge.net/dinner. One more time, blockchainedge.net/dinner. And the other thing that I wanted to share with you is a couple people asked about that encyclopedia earlier and who it came from. So what it was is this is from Troy Malek and Ryan Faust of CryptoVice. And so for those who were able to join the physical Bitcoin breakout hosted by CryptoVice, you know that Bitcoin is not just digital, it's physical, with Bitcoin, Litecoin, and other cryptocurrencies loaded in the coin. So it's part of the crypto history a lot of people don't know about, but it's got big appeal to crypto followers. So the best resource for that right now is the Encyclopedia of Physical Bitcoins. So it's an overview of almost every coin created, history, stats, etc. The encyclopedia retails for $150, but there is a discount available. And you can go to, write this down, or type it in your phone, www.coinfirm.org/supercon. And one more time, it is coinfirm.org/supercon. All right, so next up, I'm going to bring up Mark Lurie. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. So what he is all about, the name of his company is Biddable. He's the CEO. He's got quite the pedigree. Codex protocol is a decentralized title registry for the $2 trillion art and collectibles asset class, supported by a large industry consortium. The Codex stores ownership and provenance while ensuring privacy for collectors. At launch, several initial dApps will allow collectors to more easily find what they want, buy at auctions, and ensure authenticity, all with crypto. The Codex is the first step to achieving a larger and more accessible art and collectibles market. So, Mark Lurie previously founded and sold Lofty.com, a venture-backed, expert-reviewed online marketplace for art and collectibles. Prior to Lofty, he worked in venture capital as an investor at FJ Labs and at Bessemer Venture Partners, where his involvements included Twilio. And Mark has an MBA from Harvard Business School and a BA from Harvard College, where he studied economics. Like I said, quite the pedigree. So why don't you all give a warm round of applause for Mark Lurie. Come on up here, sir.
Thanks.
Get away. Thanks, man.
Hi, how are you all? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about applying blockchain to a traditional industry and solving use cases which aren't crypto specific, but which crypto is a very powerful tool to address. And this is going to be a relatively short presentation, so I encourage you to come up and ask questions. As soon as you have a question, come on up to the center. If you can ask them online, feel free. And as soon as I'm done, we'll have a nice discussion. So if you've never purchased fine art or collectibles, you may not know how hard it is. But it's quite hard. So imagine buying a piece of art. How do you know where to find it? How do you know how much to pay? How do you know if it's authentic? If you're buying at auction, how do you register and get approved to bid? It's not trivial. And how do you prove your ownership and prove provenance to preserve resale value for a future owner? It's really hard. I started and sold an online marketplace for fine art and collectibles, and so I know firsthand just how hard it is. And I'll tell you why it's hard in a moment. But first, I'll tell you why it's important. Art and collectibles is a $2 trillion asset class. It includes fine art, fine wine, jewelry, watches, collectible cars, coins, and more. Sophisticated investors have been using it for hundreds of years as an uncorrelated store of value. It's an obvious choice for crypto wealth, if only it were easier. And it would be easier if there were a simple title registry that stores provenance, which is the history of ownership, and the primary driver of authenticity and thus value. But the art and collectibles market has never been willing to trust a central authority with information about ownership, what art or jewelry it owns. Blockchain is the answer. With blockchain, we can prove provenance while preserving privacy. And that's why we're building the Codex protocol, a decentralized title registry for the art and collectibles asset class, upon which developers can create third-party applications for real-life use cases like insurance, asset-backed lending, fractional ownership and securitization, artists and artist royalties, galleries, and auction houses, and more. And we have a native token that's required to access the registry and modify titles. And the fee for doing so is inversely proportional to the amount of tokens held within each application by its users, driving network effects that drive further usage. And we're creating the first application, Biddable. And Biddable makes it possible to instantly and anonymously bid in auctions and purchase with cryptocurrency directly instead of fiat. And we know this will drive adoption because we're backed by an industry consortium that ensures that on day one, holders of cryptocurrency will be able to buy art and collectibles from 5,000 auction houses that sell over 10 million items a year worth over $6 billion in value. As Codex protocol becomes the standard, all the problems I mentioned earlier will become solved, and art and collectibles becomes easy. The team has great experience from finance, venture capital, art and collectibles, software development, and blockchain, including from Harvard, Oxford, Credit Suisse, Bessemer Venture Partners, and Microsoft. And we have phenomenal investors and advisors, including Bessemer Venture Partners and the president of Christie's for the Americas. So that's a little bit about Codex Protocol. If you want to find out more, you can visit us at codexprotocol.com. You can join our Telegram community at Codex Protocol, and you can come speak with me after, and I'm happy to answer any questions. In the interim, I'd love to hear any questions people have about the art and collectibles asset class. Why title is so important, why provenance matters, how to address malicious activities within the asset class, and why cryptocurrency should actually be diversifying into this asset class as opposed to others. So please let me know if you have any questions.
And if you want, you can go ahead and submit them at pollev/MAK, and we'll moderate them too. You'll see it up on the screen right now. Always go up and ask Mark any question you have. Go for it.
So are there already, like in the space with like Christie's, Sotheby's, Brunk, those type of auction houses that really specialize in storing that knowledge now? Do you have any partnerships with any of those, or have you spoken to them yet?
Sure. So what we've done is we've brought into the consortium the technology and software providers to the auction and art industry and the art and collectibles industry. So we're going to be integrated into the software that's already used by all these auction houses, the online bidding software. And the reason this is so important for auction houses in particular, and some of the ones you've mentioned that we've spoken with at length, and many of the auction houses within our consortium, is because a particular problem in the auction market is title escrow. It's actually very difficult to register and bid in an auction today. You often have to apply 2 weeks ahead. You have to maybe send bank statements, And about 1 million bidders a year are just declined from bidding, not allowed to bid, particularly people from Asia in the US and Asia. And the reason is because auction houses need to know that if you win, you bid and win, that you'll actually pay. They lose a lot of revenue to people who bid and win but never pay, and they can't just go ahead and sell that item because the auction's over. And so with title escrow, we're solving that problem, and you can join instantly by leaving a cryptocurrency deposit in a title escrow contract. So the auction house is confident that you'll pay for what you win, because otherwise you'll lose the deposit. And that way they'll let you bid instantly and pay with crypto. And you can be sure you get the title so that you can preserve the value of the piece. And that's one of the reasons that the auction houses are so excited about this and why blockchain solves a real use case for them. And that's why they've joined the consortium so enthusiastically.
Hey, thank you.
Any other questions? If you don't have them, I'll invent them. Because I've heard a lot.
I've got one that just got submitted, which are what other niches could benefit from your model for art?
Sure. So there's a lot of applications that can be built on top of a store of provenance. Every time in this asset class that you want to know if you want to buy a piece of wine, a bottle of wine or a piece of art, you actually have to diligence the provenance. Who owned it in the past? Because that's what determines value. So if you want to buy, if you want to insure, you need an appraisal. If you want to loan against a piece, you need to diligence that the person actually owns it, it's authentic, which means who's owned it in the past. And so every time you need to do almost anything in this market, you need to repeat the work of researching who owns it, where does it come from, what's the history of ownership. And it's not trivial to do that, because a lot of times people don't even want to acknowledge that they previously owned it. Privacy matters. And in particular, you want to see that someone like, Christie's owned it in the past, or a reputable auction house. And so this means that doing anything in the art and collectibles market requires a bunch of work that's expensive, costs thousands of dollars, and takes a lot of time. And with a store of provenance, you can instantly check that. And that enables other applications in different niches. So insurers can look at the title instantly and give you an insurance quote. Asset-backed lenders can look at a title and instantly say, okay, I know it's authentic, and give you a quote for a loan or put a lien on the piece. Artists can track the transfer of the piece and have royalty rights. A lot of different use cases once you have provenance that make the whole market work really efficiently. And it's fine art, fine wine, jewelry, watches, collectible cars, a lot of different things. The key is that this is the only asset class that doesn't have a title registry today, and that makes it particularly hard to work. And that's why, while blockchain can enable a title registry for real estate and a lot of other categories, we're focusing on the art and collectibles asset class and the various niches within it, because that's where it can benefit from blockchain the most.
With your structure, it seems like you could allow partial ownership of some of these great pieces of work, and that would provide good collateral or good, stored value. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So just as you can get a mortgage on a house and your house is collateral for a loan, you can get an asset-backed loan on a piece of art. And indeed, this is a big business today. There's many asset-backed lenders for art. I've worked with many of them before in my last company. And so you bring the piece or the jewelry, and you say, here's what I have. Can you give me a loan against it at a very low interest rate? And it perhaps doesn't require personal guarantees or other credit checks or other forms of liquidity. And so there's a lot of lenders and a lot of capital that's actually provided against artwork as collateral. The problem is that it's not worth doing unless the item is of sufficient value. And because transaction costs in this industry are 40% plus, the loan-to-value ratios are actually very low that people will loan against these pieces. And the reason is that it's actually quite expensive to prove the authenticity of the piece, because you have to research the provenance every time. So if you're an asset-backed lender, before you loan, you need to maybe you're going to need to look at the piece and say, okay, show me receipts. I'm going to call around, try to see if this really was sold as you say it was sold through a certain chain of ownership. And then because I can't register my lien anywhere, I'm going to have to hold it and take it in-house. And so that makes it really expensive to do an asset-backed loan. Now, if you have a title registry, that becomes instant and easy, which means the asset-backed lending market with art as a collateral will expand dramatically. And that's one of the use cases which we expect to happen very quickly on top of Codex protocol. Similarly, once you have a title, you can easily fractionalize ownership, register that ownership, tokenize that art, and sell it off to a bunch of different parties who can trade it easily. So that's another application that we may be able to build once we have a title registry.
All right, I've got one more that came in here that's along those same lines, which is if an artist puts one of their photos or a portfolio up for sale in Codex, how does the fractional ownership work, and can thousands of people own, and is this only for physical art or digital too?
It's for both physical and digital art. What we're doing is we're creating an identity for each piece on the blockchain that stores metadata about that piece, any sorts of metadata. The history of ownership is the most important one. Appraisals, liens, fractional ownership registries, that's all stuff that can be stored there as well. Now, we're not developing the fractional ownership application, so I can't speak to exactly how that would work, but what I would imagine is an application would essentially purchase the piece, own the title, and put that title in a smart contract, and then issue a token around from that smart contract that represents a piece of the title itself, and that could be freely traded. So I'm not really sure that answers the question, but the answer is there's a lot of different things you can do to fractionalize ownership once you have a title registry. And there's a lot of different ways you envision that, and as people invent different ways to do this, we encourage them to come with us, and we want to support them because this is the infrastructure on top of which they can build. But it's physical art, it's digital art, and once you can track the ownership of it, you can do lots of different things, whatever you want. Any other questions? So one question we get a lot, which is particularly interesting, is how do you actually ensure that the virtual title ties to the physical item? And that's a really interesting question, and I think the answer is pretty interesting. So I'll use that as a prompt. And there's a few answers. So I mentioned that we're creating identity for physical objects in the blockchain. You can store any sorts of metadata, and that includes things like RFID chips that are tied to an item. It can include things like synthetic DNA and emerging technologies with IoT devices that we're already working with to kind of tie physical items. But what's even more interesting is that's not really even necessary, because in this asset class, the value is in the provenance, even more than the physical piece. And so let's say you have the title, and you can prove you purchased it from someone who purchased it from someone who purchased it from Christie's or from the artist. And you have a real item, and you want to swap in a fake item. Well, now the fake item would have the value of the real item, and the real item would have the value of the fake item. So there's actually very little economic incentive to switch pieces out, because the value of art and collectibles is in the history of ownership and the evidence of authenticity. It's not actually in the physical piece. And indeed, in the art market today, the biggest problem is not exact replicas, because why would you try to sell the Mona Lisa? Everyone knows the Mona Lisa is in the Louvre. What you do instead is you say, I have a previously undiscovered Leonardo da Vinci, and here's the provenance, it's actually authentic. And so that's the way a lot of a lot of fraud happens in the market today as opposed to exact replicas. And that's why the provenance, preserving and proving that, is actually the primary source of value, and why there's actually very little incentive to separate a virtual item, a physical item, from its virtual provenance.
All right, we got one more question that just came in here, which is, could a small group of individuals, 3 to 4 people, commingle funds to bid and own assets?
Absolutely. I think there's lots of ways to do that. So you can get together and buy something among the small group. You could create a smart contract to pool your resources, and that smart contract could be the owner of the title. It's very similar to fractionalizing ownership, which I think is a great application that people could build on top of the Codex protocol. So yeah, absolutely, that's a use case we see. Ultimately, the most important use cases for us early on are, how do you drive adoption? How do you solve real problems in the collectibles asset class? How do you expand a consortium so that this becomes a standard and everyone starts using it? Because that's the most important thing to make blockchain technology solve real problems, is to get real users to use it to solve real needs. And that's what we're excited about doing, and that's why we've been able to bring in an industry consortium. And we're really excited that Codex protocol has the opportunity to prove the utility of blockchain to the masses, to a retail market that doesn't necessarily need to know the details of the technology. They just need to realize, oh my God, this can really address problems. This can prove ownership and preserve privacy. And so that's why we're really excited for the crypto community to support Codex protocol, and for Codex protocol to kind of bring crypto to a big part of the market. So that's about the time. If anyone else has another question, let me know. But if you're excited about what we're doing, and I hope you are, come find me after. I'll be here all day. Or visit us at Codex Protocol on Telegram or at codexprotocol.com.
Give them a big hand. Great job. That was awesome. Really good. So I am very, very pleased to announce that we have a very special guest. Do you know who that special guest might be who's going to be speaking at about 1 o'clock? What's his name rhyme with? McAfee, that's right. So here's the deal. We have right now 33 minutes for a lunch break. And then at 1 o'clock or so, we don't know. John does what John wants to do. That's what I hear. But he's going to be here at 1 o'clock to speak with you. Now, I just turned on the polling. So one more time, you can head on over to www.pollev.com/MAK. You can see it on the screen there. You can start submitting your questions now and upvoting them. We'll probably give precedence to those first before the mics. But why don't you just go ahead and start submitting your questions now and be back here at 1 o'clock p.m. sharp, or earlier if you want a fantastic seat. So go out, grab a bite. Thanks.